Oh, so let's see who shows
Yeah,
up.
hello everyone. Welcome to the weekly show of What is School For? On this show, I interview leading educators, entrepreneurs, business owners, students, traditional and non-traditional students, and parents to come here. We discuss, debate, and disrupt education. The goal is to future-proof the next generation. And today we have my dear friend Nick on the show to talk about something that I am very interested in learning more about, which is being an introverted in an extroverted environment. And as I was getting ready to prepare for our interview, I was thinking, wow, almost every single person in my life, including my husband, is an introvert, and I'm really interested in learning more about how, like, what are some unique characteristics of being an introvert and how they are navigating the social media space, the online space, and day-to-day work, so I can collaborate with those people better and more effectively. For those of you who don't know who is Nick is actually a trained actor. I was like, wow, I didn't even know that. And also a public speaking coach. Very interesting combo, right? When you think about it, being an introvert, and now your career is pretty much based on talking with people, being on stage. So really, really interesting, really excited for our conversation today. And I want to learn more about this. And so welcome to the show. And we are live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on Twitter, on Periscope, on YouTube, and on Twitch. So
we are viral.
We are. I hope so. With you on the show, my friend. Yes. Oh. And so let me know in the comment section where you guys are joining us live from on a beautiful Friday, for some of you Saturday. So thank you so much for joining us live. And Nick, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Really excited. And we already have a few people here. Thank you so much, everyone. And so today we're talking about introverts and extroverts. So I thought maybe it is better that we start off our discussion by talking about definitions. I feel like introverts, extroverts, those are some concepts that people use all the time. But I personally don't even know. I feel like I'm an extrovert, but I don't know exactly, how these things actually define. So share with us how those terms are actually defined.
Yeah, I mean, people might use different definitions, to be honest. I feel like sometimes people play a bit fast and loose. So they might think, oh, there was this one time where I didn't feel like going out, so I'm totally an introvert, and I get it. I'm like, well, we're all humans. We all have pretty much the same parts. It's just a matter of to what ratio, like what's the analogy. So it's not like I never talk to people or never get out of my shell. It's about tendencies. So I think the biggest differentiator is if you are an extrovert like you, that means you derive your energy from outside, so from interaction with your environment, especially with other people. So that energizes you and gives you a buzz, like getting the interaction and the attention and talking to people, exploring new things. And being left alone is going to wear you out a lot of the time. And if you're an introvert like me, it's vice versa. So I actually get my energy from solitude and from being left alone. This is how I decompress. Like when people are like, oh, I'm off work, I want to blow off steam. And they mean they want to go out for a drink or mingle. And when I say I want to blow off steam, it means I want to go home and be by myself or take a walk or like a hike or a bike ride by myself in nature. That's where I get my energy from. And interacting with other people generally tends to drain me, even if it's people that I like. So I think that's the best definition that I can give you. It's about what gives you energy and what saps your energy, because they're inverted, they're yin and yang.
Oh, wow, that is so interesting. We have 20 people live with us already. And let me know, I'm so curious, everyone in the comment section, let me know if you are an extrovert or introvert. And I love this definition because it is kind of how I operate. Like, just like right now, hosting my show, I'm just feeling like energized, getting so much energy. And I don't need to, like, really interesting to hear that. So how are you, like being this way? And so what are some like what are some techniques that you use? You are so active on social media, and in fact, now as we talk, I remember almost all the social media conferences that I attend or speak at. There is a session on being an introvert in a social media space. I feel like lots of people on social media are actually introverted. So how do you navigate this space? How do you even like recharge yourself? Like so share that with us.
Oh, that's a long thing. The short version would be.
Look, we have so many introverts. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I don't have much of a multitasking skill, so you probably are picking up more of the comments than I am.
I try, which is really hard.
Something big comes up, let me know. It definitely requires a lot of pause and break for me because I can't just socialize all the time. And being on social media for someone who's as introverted as I am, it's still socializing, even if it's digital. It's not, I would say, as draining as face-to-face socializing is, but it still does that. So I sometimes struggle with the people who say, oh, you need to show up every day, no excuses, blah, 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 motivation, mindset, all that stuff. I'm like, but I can't. I'm very introverted. I need to take regular breaks. For example, you will rarely see me on social media on weekends. And if I'm going through a period where I'm busy, like right now, I will usually time myself. So I don't, because LinkedIn or any social medium, it can be a bit of a rabbit hole. You forget how much time you spend there, then you spend too much time. And if you're introverted, you can just burn yourself out. So what I do is I time myself and I take regular breaks. And then obviously the other thing is it's a matter of keeping in mind what's at stake. So social media is almost an integral part of marketing, right? How are you going to market and promote your business if you're not going to be on social media? It's almost impossible these days. So I see it as one of those things that I just have to do, even if sometimes it's tiring. And by being myself, actually, because the instinct, especially if you're introverted, I think, is to not give too much of yourself and to play it super safe and not display any kind of personality. And that actually backfires, because by being myself, I can attract great people like you and my kind of tribe on social media. And that means that when I do actually show up, I have the most fun that I can comparatively have on social media. Does that make sense? It's not just drab, like, I have to show up and post something. But I know that I'll see friendly faces and I'll see people that actually like interacting with. And that takes away some of that edge. It takes away some of that difficulty.
Wow, that is so interesting. Actually, I think I'm understanding my husband a little bit better just based on what you have shared so far. So what do you think are some misperceptions that people have about introverts?
Oh, I think the biggest one is probably shyness and introversion. They think it's the same thing and it's not. So I get this all the time that people say, well, you're an introvert? What? You can't be an introvert. You're not shy at all. You're good with people. Like that has nothing to do with it. I used to be shy pre-drama school, but we'll get to that probably. Shyness just means that you are intimidated or afraid of talking to other people, especially large crowds or an audience. And you can absolutely be extroverted but shy. Like there are people who love interacting with other people. They really want to be part of a group or to be accepted and to belong. They're just, awkward about it and they don't know what to say and what to do. So they get uncomfortable even though they want to do this. And I'm kind of the opposite. I'm not really a people person, but I can interact with people just fine. I can stand in front of an audience or on a stage and not really experience an anxiety. And I think that's the biggest myth. People are always like, oh, but you're not socially awkward. You don't have trouble talking to people. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have trouble. I just don't enjoy it most of the time. These are two different things. And the other thing is, I think...
Oh, interesting.
The other thing is, if you are quite extroverted, often you might interpret introverts as having something against you or disliking you because they might seem a bit standoffish or they might not interact much. Like I get that quite a bit, that people will tell me, oh, when we first met, I thought you really didn't like me because you didn't really talk much. But that is not me disliking anyone. That's just my default setting. And a lot of times we can both project, as in the introverts and the extroverts. We can be guilty of projection and we can annoy each other because we're trying to treat the other one as we would like to be treated. But obviously that doesn't work if the other person is the opposite. So I'm giving you space, for example, as an extrovert. because I usually like my space and I like minding my own business. So I think I'm doing the right thing and treating you well by giving you space, but you might interpret that as rejection, and vice versa. You try to talk to me because you are trying to include me. You're trying to show me that, hey, we are friendly here. You can talk to us because you would like that. But actually, I interpret that as, being bothered, or, oh, people just can't leave me alone. Does that make sense? I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions.
It is so important that we actually have conversations like this, so we actually know how the other species, how they function, right? Like for me, exactly. I feel like I always try, hey, join us. Why are you now going out? Why you are now joining us? Things like that. But it is interesting to hear you explain this from your perspective, which is very different from how I am interpreting this. So it is really nice that we're actually having a conversation about this. Yeah, oftentimes I feel like we don't really talk about this. Is something that maybe people don't feel comfortable talking about, and we just carry the misperceptions with us.
I think it's not just not being comfortable. I think a lot of times people are not even aware, because sometimes you just assume that everyone ticks the way that you do. So until somebody brings it up and you have that shocker of, oh, wait, not everyone thinks that way. I think a lot of times it's not even being afraid to talk about it. We just don't know it's even happening. Like until somebody explained it to me, I wasn't even aware that people trying to include me and trying to talk to me, when in my mind, I made it very obvious that I don't want to be talked to because I'm kind of off in the corner reading a book or listening to music. I thought I made it very clear that I'd like to mind my own business, and people trying to include me into a conversation, to me, it didn't feel like they're trying to do something nice, because to me it was irritating, but they were just trying to do something nice. Most of the time, I think when you have conflict with someone, or when someone is irritating you or vice versa, it's just because you're not playing by the same rules, because in your mind the game is different and you haven't realized the other person is not playing the same game, rather than an actual bad intention.
Yeah. So do you think, like, because I really tend to do that, especially when I go to conferences, like, hey, come, I will grab the person, join us. So maybe it's better to ask first, right? Like, how do you think we should approach this, right? Not making assumption, but hey, ask, would you like to? Because as you mentioned, I think now listening to you talk, I need to be better at reading the nonverbal cues, when people are at the corner. So that is sending a signal that I want to be left alone. So interesting. Do you think asking is a good approach, or what?
Yeah, I think asking, but making it very clear that there's no pressure. We're just going to go over there and do that thing. And if you want to join us, you're welcome to, but no pressure. If you need your own space, I understand. Something along those lines. Like, I appreciate it if someone gives me the option, but they make it clear that they don't expect me to do it. They're not going to take it personally if I don't, because it's rarely ever personal.
Yeah. This is so interesting. So what do you think are some like superpowers of people who are actually introverts? And I think there are quite a few books or articles talking about many people in leadership positions. They are actually 100% introvert. So what do you think are some superpowers? Yeah.
I think the two main things that I consider the superpowers of introverts is that we tend to be better at analyzing other people. So it sounds backwards, but extroverts often analyze or observe less, because they're so caught up in the doing part that they might not actually listen or observe as keenly as the introverts. We are generally people watchers as opposed to people interactors. So we often, even though we tend to socialize less, I think most of the time we're actually better at observing and analyzing other people, which can be a very useful trait, in a leader, if you're able to analyze and break down correctly, as long as you're not caught up in overthinking and overanalyzing, which is like one of our biggest weaknesses, that we tend to be thinkers as opposed to doers. So you can just sit there and observe, but forget to actually do anything about it. But yeah, the analysis, the analytical, and the people watching part is, I think, one of the big strengths. And the other one is usually your people-pleasing tendencies or instincts tend to be proportional to your extroversion. So the more social and extroverted you are, the more likely you want to please other people, or you need attention and approval. So me being a very introverted person, sometimes people find out the wrong way, that even though I'm quiet and polite, I'm not a people pleaser at all. So I have zero issues saying no or shutting someone down if they're being difficult, because I don't care if that makes me look difficult. It's just not how my mind works. I'm not someone who's affected by other people's opinion of me. So that, again, you cannot let that run rampant, obviously, and become an antisocial a-hole and start offending everyone just because, well, I don't care what people think of me. It needs to be kept in check. And for me, I personally know that it's one of my weaknesses, and I need to keep that trait of mine, that sort of general indifference towards people's opinions. I need to keep that in check. But if you can control it, it can be a huge advantage, because so many people's lives are unnecessarily difficult, right? They have so much unnecessary drama and complication and suffering because they allow people to tell them what to do. They allow people to suck them into situations they don't want to be part of just because, they think, I don't want to be seen as rude. I don't want to be seen as high maintenance. I don't want to be seen as a drama queen. I don't want people to talk about me. So I think that's a big one, if you're immune to that.
Oh my God, I love this. You are so spot on. I can tell you are an expert on being an introvert versus being an extrovert, because 2 points that you mentioned really resonated with me. So
Okay.
First, being a people pleaser. That is exactly who I am. It is, I actually have to work with coaches to learn how I can say no to people. And I'm telling you, it is hard. It is very, very hard. I think I'm definitely getting better at saying no to people, especially like projects that I don't want to be a part of, but I'm always afraid of hurting people's feelings. Like, I think my husband really helped me on this. So that part is really true. I think that is whoever has that is a superpower for sure. And second, you're talking about taking action. I'm definitely an action taker. And even like resigning from my associate professor position, launching my business, decided to build my school. It feels like one day I was like, yeah, I'm going to resign and I need to build my school. I really didn't think much about this. I felt like 30% kind of, or maybe 20% kind of ready, and I jumped. And whereas for my husband, he's very different. He wouldn't make a decision like this. He will be thinking, analyzing, having a plan. I didn't have a business plan before I started my business. I'm building my business and developing my business plan. So, which is really interesting. So I think that you are absolutely spot on those two things.
Well, this is why, because you mentioned, funnily enough, I can't remember if that was before we went live, that most of the people close to you are actually introverts. It's the same for me. Most people close to me are actually extroverts. Pretty much all of my close friends, my parents, my sister, my favorite clients, they're all extroverts. I think we attract each other in this kind of yin-yang way, not in a woo-woo way, but just we understand that we balance each other out. So, I think a lot of introverts make the mistake of thinking that they need to hang out primarily with other introverts because they would understand me so much better. But that's not necessarily everything, because I actually, I'm not a people person, but when I do hang out with people, I prefer to hang out with extroverts because we balance each other out. We help each other cover our weaknesses. And I think it's so much better than introvert, or extrovert.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, I think that's why, Simon Sinek, he talks about, to run a business, you need a why person, you also need a how person. And now as I listen to you, I feel like a good team, you need a good balance of people who are kind of like me, is just social all the time. They are just super hyper. And you also need people who are thinkers. And I think you need a team like that. So I love that. Here's a great question from our friend Lance, joining us live from Australia, super like 2 a.m. or something. So how about emotional intelligence, right? So where, like, is there any connection between EQ and the introverts and extroverts? So where do we draw the line, the intersection? Like, I think that's a very interesting question.
Okay. Bear in mind, I'm not a psychologist, so this is just my opinion or observation. But I think it can go either way, because I think one of the caricatures is that if you're introverted, you're highly sensitive to other people's emotions and highly empathetic and highly emotionally aware. And if you're extroverted, you're kind of more superficial. And I really don't think that's the truth. I think it can go either way. So if any of you are familiar with the Myers-Briggs, what is it called? Psychographic segmentation. So the 16 personalities that are 4 letters. So for example, I would be an INTJ. So introverted, intuitive, thinking, and judging. So you will see that all of them show up in all flavors. So you can be extroverted, but highly emotionally aware. You can be extroverted and more head, so more of a thinker than emotional, and vice versa. I'm an introvert, but I wouldn't really consider myself all that emotional. I'm way more head than heart. So introverted does not necessarily mean emotionally sensitive or emotionally intelligent. I think okay. I would consider myself emotionally intelligent just because I was a teacher for over a decade. So you kind of have to get good at that stuff if you handle other people. But I wouldn't necessarily consider myself all that sensitive, which is why I don't have an issue saying no, for example. Does that cover it?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, you are just like, yeah, I'm very good at reading people. Like when I walk into a room, I can know this person's happy or not happy. I can read their energy. So yeah, very, very, very interesting. Very interesting. And our dear friend Alice here, so nice to see her. Yeah, she's like me, a hyper. Her husband is kind of like a little bit more introverted. I think you need that good balance, right? Family and also team, running a business. So I kind of want to transition a little bit to the fact that you are also a trained actor.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't perform anymore, but I did train.
But I thought that was really interesting. And even now you are a public speaking coach. So to me, those two careers are not exactly in alignment with being an introvert, because in my mind, you have to, work yourself up and just like so much energy to pursue a career like in acting or public speaking coach. So I want to ask you, what inspired you to choose like a major in acting? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, well, so about 10 years ago, I was finishing with my language degree because originally I'm a linguist, which is why I was a language teacher and translator for many years. And I was really disillusioned with life. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't actually want to be a language teacher or a translator. And I remember that I was always artsy-fartsy, like I was always good at singing, painting, anything kind of artistic. So on a whim, I came to the UK. I didn't live here yet at that point. I came to the UK and did like a short 3-week summer course, an intro to acting. I'd never really acted before. And I fell in love with it. And I thought, oh, this is my calling. This is what I'm going to do with my life. I found my mission. So then I auditioned and I got in the next year. And in the beginning, it felt great. It felt like I found my mission in life. I found what I'm meant to be doing. And then slowly I get disillusioned with that because I realized what was actually going on. And sometimes when you take a good hard look at yourself, it's not really all that fun. So what happened was that I was not happy with my life and I was practicing escapism. For me, it was a very elaborate escapism, moving to a completely new country, starting a new life, and changing direction completely. But some people deal with their stuff by taking drugs, becoming alcoholics, becoming, I don't know, exhibitionists or compulsive shoppers or something. And I dealt with my stuff by pretending to be someone else, which I was basically using acting in lieu of probably changing my life for the better or going to therapy or something along those lines. And they told us at drama school that this is actually not that uncommon, that a lot of people they were like, a lot of people practice performing as a form of escapism. And at some point I realized what it really was. And I thought, I don't really want to perform anymore because I am uncomfortable in the spotlight. I am uncomfortable having to do this much performing and socializing and interacting. And when it finally clicked that this was my means of escape, I realized, I think I'll just rather build a better life than spend so much time and energy trying to escape from it. And that's when I said, I'm not going to perform again. But I'm very grateful about the skills that I picked up because they allowed me to become a much better teacher and now to become a public speaking coach. So no regrets.
Wow, that is so interesting, and but makes sense, right? When you play, you play on another person's role, which means that you can kind of escape from your current reality a little bit. Yeah. Oh, that is so interesting. But how about when you at the time when you were a student? Do you find that, because I asked this question, I actually work with quite a few students who are just like very introverted. Like, do you find it is challenging for you to navigate the socialization part, being popular and as a kid, in especially like kind of high school, middle school, that age? and environment? Like how do you cope with it besides,
Ooh.
acting?
Yeah, well, if you're me, then you cope with it badly. Definitely, school years were not really happy years for me. I was always a straight A student and a teacher's pet without sucking up to teachers. I was just always quite brainy and I learned very quickly. So I was always pretty much top of the class, or like, number 2 or 3. But other than that, I didn't really have a life in high school. I wasn't good at the whole, because at that point I was not just highly introverted, but I was also shy and socially awkward and lacked confidence. So I didn't really socialize or integrate much. Looking back, I would tell myself to take more action, because again, we go back to the whole extroverts tend to be action people and introverts tend to be thought or analysis people. So I think a lot of times we can get trapped in that idea of, I need to feel a certain way or certain conditions have to be met before I take action. But sometimes it's not really possible. Sometimes the feelings or the conditions happen after you take action. So if I could talk to myself like 20 years ago when I was at school, I would tell myself, start doing something, even if it's very small steps towards socializing and interacting with the other kids, because you're never really going to feel ready. It's not in your nature to feel ready. You will just not. You just need to take action before you feel ready.
So you are saying that taking the action will help you. I'm exactly the opposite, and I have all those impulse, right? Like I feel, oh yeah, I'm so inspired. I need to launch exactly 3 years ago, like when Facebook allows people to go live, I was still a traditional college professor. I said, yeah, I need to launch a show. I did zero research. I had no idea what I was doing. I just did it. I just feel something in my heart is like pushing me. And then like I made that decision, and then I just keep showing up. So for you guys, it's kind of actually the opposite. And so you actually have to take action first, and then the action will generate certain type of emotion to keep you going.
Trying to manifest the emotion just out of thin air is just not gonna work for me. And I think for most introverted people, I'm sitting there waiting to feel brave or waiting to feel courageous or waiting to feel ready. And sometimes I have to catch myself and say, Nick, you're not going to feel ready anyway. You could wait for 5 million years. You will never feel ready. Just do it.
Wow. So I feel like for people, I think, even at my school, we incorporate one element is self-awareness. I think it is really important that you actually understand who you are and how you function. Just like understanding this, it means that you actually have to take action first in order to feel ready. So wow, that's very profound.
No, thank you. Well, we live, I think, in a society, because introverts obviously are the minority. Depending on what study you look at, we could be a quarter or a fifth or a third of the population, somewhere there in that spectrum. And that means that society is pretty much made, as you said, in an extroverted world. It's your world. We're just living it. And part of that, no, I don't want to play the world's tiniest violin, but part of that is that a lot of times society will treat you as an introvert. They will treat you as a defective extrovert. They will not understand that you're a different type of personality. So treating you as a defective extrovert is not going to work. So for example, if you need space, you need space. No amount of but you should, or trying to pull you into something social is going to make you need any less space.
I feel like the fact that we're having a conversation like right now, I feel like my EQ is actually higher. Now I know how to chat with people, understand people who are very different from me. So very interesting. So here's a kind of comment and question from my dear friend Alice. She asked, wonder if people identified their personality characteristics earlier, would they be able to avoid certain issues and find pathways to happiness and satisfaction? I love that. What do you think?
Possibly. The thing is that not just understanding who you are, because I always knew that I wasn't like most kids. It's about knowing how to handle that, because if society doesn't really give you, or the people you look up to, like your family, your teachers, etc., they don't give you the tools and they don't tell you yet how do you do that, because telling you, oh, just be more confident. Well, what's that supposed to do? It should just be more outgoing. Well, that's great. That's like telling a poor person who's struggling to pay the bills, well, just don't be poor. Well, that's a what, not a how. So I do think identification helps, but it's good if someone actually tells you the how. You might be aware that you're introverted, probably. You'll realize sooner or later that most people don't tick like you. But what do you do from there?
Can you share some specific hows with us?
Well, the how, as I said, one big how is to take action first, even if it's small steps, to create kind of a snowball effect. Because you take a little step, you get a little result, that's going to give you a certain emotion. It's probably going to make you feel more competent, more in control, more confident, and then you can keep sort of reinvesting that energy and take bigger steps each time. The other thing would be to know your boundaries if you're an introvert, to know that don't allow people to push you into overcommitting and then getting burnt out, because I don't know if slow and steady, but steady. Let's go with steady wins the race. So finding something that works for you that you can do consistently, whether that's at school or in business or anything. In the beginning, when I joined LinkedIn, I allowed people to convince me that, you need to be here every day on LinkedIn. And for me, I know that some people have the stamina to do that. I just don't. I've tried it a bunch of times. It doesn't work. So being here, let's say 4 or 5 days a week, for me, that's sustainable in the long term. Whereas being here every day just isn't. I'll do it a week or two, and then I'll get burned out to take a couple of weeks off LinkedIn, which is not good if you're all that extreme. So you need to test and measure, obviously, because your boundaries and your stamina might be different to mine, but it's about slowly finding out what works and then doing more of that and less of the stuff that doesn't work.
I love this. As a teacher now, I think like how many times I called out a student in the class. Maybe the kid is an extreme introvert and didn't really feel comfortable answering my question in public, especially if I have a class of 200 students. Then in my mind, this student was not interested in what I'm talking about or being distracted. That is actually wrong. And I feel like even as teachers, we need to receive some sort of training on kind of understanding students' personality, right? Like even maybe like do some sort of like measurement or test so that we actually know how students function, or even in the corporate environment, we understand our employees better, so we can adapt to a more EQ, higher EQ approach to handle conflict, to approach them, to ask them to do certain things. But I feel like this part is really, really missing, right? Kind of understanding our own personalities and learn how to manage our own personalities, and also for leaders to understand our team, their personalities. I never learned that. I just feel like I treated all the students like the same, even though I know they're very different, but I never learned any specific technique in terms of reading people, how I should talk to people. And it's really fascinating how people can function so differently.
I mean, the responsibility is on both. It's not just exclusively on you as the educator. It's also on the student to make an effort to get into their stretch zone, to understand that, okay, but it's not exclusively up to I or whoever to save me from myself. It's also up to me to take certain steps to see, what my weaknesses are and to see how I can handle that. Obviously, as an adult, you're responsible for yourself at the end of the day.
Totally. Yeah. And so here's a very interesting question from Lucy. Thank you for joining us live. What if you are an introverted extrovert? And I think Lisa, like another person, made a similar comment. She said she is an extroverted introvert. I don't even know what this means. Do you know what this means?
That's a bit abstract for me. What I'm assuming they mean is that their tendency is not as pronounced, because obviously it's on a spectrum, like let's say 1 being super introverted and 10 being an absolute social butterfly. And I guess you will lean, I think it's very unlikely that you're a 5, but you're probably going to be like between a 1 and a 4, or between a 6 and a 10, like on the introversion and extroversion spectrum. So I think they're talking about the people who have a slight leaning to introversion or extroversion, but it's not that pronounced. Like if we say, if introversion is 1 and extroversion is 10, I'm pretty much a 1 or a 2. Like I'm very, very low on the extroversion scale. But somebody might just about be more extroverted than introverted, or vice versa. So to be honest, you'll have to figure out what works for you. You'll have to, if you want to spend time with other people slightly more than you like your time on your own, which I think would probably describe my sister the best. I should think she's the closest to an extroverted introvert, or vice versa. So she does really like her own time and space, but she also socializes and goes out with her friends more often than I do. It's about finding out what works for you, to be honest. Like, be sure that, am I going out because I feel like I should or because I want to? Am I staying at home? If I'm alone, am I alone or am I lonely? Listen to yourself a bit, and I don't want to say navel gaze, but self-analyze a little bit and see how much of that is your own and how much of that is coming from outside and from people telling you what you should be doing.
That's interesting. And so earlier you mentioned that you are on LinkedIn, on social media. I noticed recently you are doing a lot more videos on LinkedIn. Yeah. So does that come to you naturally? Do you have to kind of work?
I have to. Yeah, I have to. Really? I don't get social anxiety per se, but I am someone who doesn't like the spotlight or the attention. Which is why it cracks me up sometimes when people tell me, oh, so you coach people in public speaking, but you don't really like public speaking yourself. And I tell them, well, that's like saying, oh, so you're a divorce lawyer, but you don't like getting divorced. Like, what kind of logic is that? That's not how analogies work. I definitely have to psych myself up. I mean, obviously, once you learn some techniques, let's say in drama school, in my case, you can apply them regardless of how you feel. But there are definitely days in which it drains me more than others. So usually if I find myself in that kind of a mood where it doesn't drain me as much to do video, I'll usually just batch like a dozen videos so that I have for the next couple of weeks. It definitely takes some psyching up. It doesn't come naturally to me. I've been very honest, I think, about the fact that I would probably not be on social media, not probably, scratch that, definitely not be on social media if business wasn't involved. I think sometimes the people who preach about how you should be showing up every day, no excuses, blah, 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 this is usually coming from the highly extroverted people who would probably be on social media anyway, even just for personal reasons. Even if no money, no business was involved, they'd just be on social media because they like it. And they don't understand that for some of us, being on LinkedIn is not more of the same, just with a bit more shop talk. It's that instead of showing my breakfast or here's my feet with a backdrop of the sea and feeling #blessed about it, instead I'm talking about my business. I would probably not be on social media at all if business wasn't involved. So to a huge introvert like me, it is a brand new thing that feels unnatural a lot of the time. It's not more of the same, just with a bit more business talk. So it's not natural at all. The good thing about that is that I'm showing kind of by what I do that it doesn't have to be natural for you. Even if you're a huge introvert, if marketing your business on social media is something necessary, you can absolutely learn to do it, because don't confuse skill with personality trait. These are two separate things.
Wow, I have to say, this is the most profound conversation I have had for a long time.
Thank you.
That's why really disrupting so many ways, that so many things that I think about introvert, and even now as I listen to you talk, I'm thinking about how I'm coaching my clients, and I need to ask them a deeper question, right? Like personality, because not everyone is like me. Like after this interview, I will feel like, yeah, super high, super energized. I actually have a coaching call coming up. I have another talk coming up. So this energizes me. So how do you recharge yourself?
Time alone, one, and two, not doing much, because this is usually a typical introvert trait, is that we get overstimulated and burnt out quite quickly. So we tend to perceive that there is some neuroscience behind that. I'm not a scientist. I don't know enough to go into detail, but we tend to be more sensitive to most types of stimuli, which is why we're easily overstimulated, and a little bit of stimulation goes a long way, which is why it's a typical introvert trait to be perfectly happy to just not do much, to just sit back with a book or just go for a walk in nature and be perfectly happy. Whereas the people who've got ants in their pants and always like to be new stuff, more stuff, they always have to be doing something. They can't really sit idle. That's a typical extrovert trait. It's uncommon to find an introvert who also can't sit still. Even if it's not socializing, they will probably not just want to do stuff, just solo stuff. It's not likely to happen. Usually introverts like me like to just take it slow. When we're off the job and we need time to recharge, it's all about taking it slow. I recharge by taking time off, and as I said, doing really nothing of note. Just reading a book, cleaning the house, taking a walk, going for a bike ride by myself. Something very, very uneventful, but that rejuvenates me.
So interesting. I think I'm probably driving my husband crazy on a daily
Are you
basis.
one of those people? Are you one of those people who always have to be doing something, like in motion?
Like that a little bit, but I don't mind being alone by myself. But like if we do things, I have to take my husband to do it. Like I don't really go out. We always have to go out together. I will be asking, where are you going? You're like, I need to go with you, or you need to be with me in the same space. So it's really interesting to hear this perspective from you. Now I'm thinking differently, and so I love this comment from that you mentioned earlier. And Gabby, thank you for joining us live. I agree. When you mention like personality versus skill, so when it is a skill, it's like building muscle. We can work on it. We can improve it. So like, can you share with us, right? Like you mentioned that you have to work yourself up to do a video. So what are some specific like actions or techniques that you have to take to develop this skill? Because in this day and age, like marketing yourself, even building a personal brand, it's kind of necessary. I even coach my own students. You have to build an online brand. So like, what do you do to work yourself up to do this?
Yeah, I like to do a physical, this is pretty much professional deformation from drama school, but I need to warm myself up physically. So, stretch everything, crack everything, warm myself up vocally, like everything, to make sure that everything is nice and warm and relaxed as it can get, in front of a camera, in front of an audience. Because if you get the anxiety and the discomfort in front of an audience, whether that's like that or a live audience, that has some physical effects, like your throat might get tighter, your breathing might get shallower, you might start sweating or trembling, your voice might start shaking. And I don't want to show up on video sounding like this, obviously, so I have to warm up and stabilize everything. So yeah, it's a lot of very technical stuff. Vocal warm-ups, breathing exercises, like breathing deeply into your belly as opposed to the shallow breathing that we tend to do into our chest. Diaphragmatic breathing, you might have heard it this way. Everything, warming up my breath, my voice, stretching out, all of that stuff. I don't just spontaneously sit down and do a video. That's usually not me.
So can you be more specific? This is like a new language. What do you mean warming up your voice, warming up your breath? Like, what do you do exactly? I'm so curious.
Okay. So I can show you a couple of exercises. So your breath needs to go deep into your belly, so diaphragmatic breathing. So basically, when you breathe in and out, your stomach should expand and contract like a balloon, which is the opposite of what most people do. Usually when people inhale, their chest and their shoulders rise and their waist contracts, which is not what you're supposed to do. So if you look at how babies breathe, you'll see that their stomachs expand and contract like balloons, because that's actually the way that we're designed by nature to work. And then because of stress, because of self-consciousness, all of these things, we unlearn that. So step one would be to really dial in the breathing to make sure that you're breathing in through your nose, letting your stomach expand and contract, as opposed to like right now I'm breathing very deeply. This helps with so many things, including the anxiety to an extent. And then you warm up your voice, which means that you need to make sure that your voice is not tight or throaty or nasal or anything like that. So a couple of useful exercises for that. And anyone who's watched my videos knows exactly what's coming up now, because it's the same stuff that I talk about all the time. Trills, which is doing that. And it can sound and look a little bit silly, but it helps so much with not getting a sore throat when you talk, with your voice popping out as opposed to in, because a lot of times people get throaty and nasal and they push and they do that and their voice is uncomfortable, and that's not sustainable or probably pleasant to listen to for the audience. So really doing plenty of and making sure that every part of your voice is nice and warmed up, like how you would do with your body. You would not go for, let's say, a cartwheel or the splits, if you can do that. You will not just roll out of bed and do the splits, or you will not just get out of bed and lift 100 kilos, even if you could. You would slowly warm up to that point, and that's exactly what a vocal warm-up would be. So you would slowly, before you start talking on camera, you would slowly try different parts of your range and make sure that everything is there, it's easy, it's comfortable, it's accessible, so you don't have to push at any given point.
Right. Like, do you also, I imagine you can also do those simple exercises before you speak on stage, public
Yeah,
speaking, right? So
yeah,
those practices will also help you relax more, things
yeah.
like that.
It will help you relax more, and they will help you get so much more with a lot less effort. Because if you start pushing your voice, it gets uncomfortable physically. Like it might hurt, it might get tight. Then when you're uncomfortable physically, it's hard to feel comfortable mentally as well. How comfortably can you feel mentally if this hurts, that hurts, you can't get enough oxygen, and you're like that on stage? You're not going to feel comfortable, and you're not going to make the best impression probably.
Oh, wow, this is so interesting. So interesting. Yeah, everyone loves. Iris, thank you for joining us live. Learning more, like about you, like from an introverted perspective, and it is so interesting that kind of many people mention that they wouldn't be on social media without if they were not running. You are definitely not alone. I see quite a few people. Yeah, and yeah, you have lots of friends there.
Oh, that's nice to see. Yeah, Gabby, thank you. People don't get it. More extroverts tend to not get it. They're like, "What do you mean do nothing? That's boring." Like, it's not boring. It's amazing. I love doing nothing. It feels fantastic.
Oh my God, that will be very hard to come out of my mouth. Doing nothing feels fantastic.
I love doing nothing. I love sleeping. I think sleeping is probably my favorite thing in the world. And then after sleeping, it's doing nothing.
So you literally just sit there and do nothing.
It's amazing. Or I might just listen to a podcast, or listen to some music, or read a book, or just watch something really mindless on Netflix or YouTube. Not something that requires me to concentrate a whole lot. It feels great because I get overstimulated quite quickly, so I don't want to do something that keeps stimulating me.
That's so interesting, because the only time I do nothing is when I meditate, which is interesting, right? I do meditate every day, and but like I sit there still, I listen to the meditation tape. I feel that is my only time kind of doing nothing. And then throughout the day, I'm like moving around all the time. Yeah, doing something. Yeah.
Oh, we have a trumpeter saying singers and trumpeters do diaphragmatic breathing. Yeah, definitely. If your breath isn't dialed in, correct, and if you do the shallow breathing into your chest, that is just a domino effect for everything. It affects your stance, it affects your voice, it affects everything.
Yeah, I agree, Ella. We love
you. We love you too, Ella.
Wait, I'm learning so much. Yeah, so can you share with us, you mentioned a little bit with that, like acting backgrounds and learning about it, and how has that kind of helped you do what you do today? I mean, like, I imagine you being a coach, right? You have to do like code. Do you ever do code messaging? Do you ever do like, having a conversation with a person? I'm selling myself, I'm selling my service, like, right? Like, do you ever do that? Like, how do you prepare yourself for calls like that? Like talking to a stranger, hey, I'm like, yeah, I'm the best coach, you have to hire me, and I can help you do this and that. So any techniques you can share with us that help you, smash all those cold messaging, sales calls, and get that deal, close that lead?
Oh, I don't tend to do a whole lot of cold messaging. It's usually inbound, although I do probably need to reach out more. It's one of the things that I've learned about marketing, that usually the two-pronged approach, so inbound and outbound, probably work the best. But for calls like that with potential clients, yeah, as I said, I do all my warm-ups and whatnot so that I know that nothing, like my voice, my breath, nothing is going to just give out on me at the wrong moment. And then I found what works for me is to be fairly passive about it. So basically ask questions and slowly get things out of them to really find out what they need and how they tick and what the important things for them are, and to ask really targeted questions as opposed to a lot of them. So for example, one thing that I like to ask is, do you have any kind of specific goal? Because if they don't have a specific goal, if they just say something like, oh, I just want to get better at public speaking, I'm like, that's just too abstract. And you're probably going to lose motivation, because public speaking is such a common fear. It can feel so uncomfortable for a lot of people, even extroverts, that if you don't have a specific goal, it's probably not going to motivate you enough. A specific goal motivates. A vague one, like get better, what does that mean? It's the same with anything else, like saying that I want to lose 10 kilos this year, that is a specific goal. You're far more likely to achieve it. Whereas I want to eat healthier or I want to lose weight. What does that mean? That is just too abstract. So tend to do that and ask, really drill for the truth. So ask targeted as opposed to too many questions, and let them do the talking and kind of give me the ammunition and give me the information that I need.
Yeah. Let them do, like, more feels like them do the talking.
Yeah.
And feels more conversational.
It's definitely never about, I mean, it's about discovering whether you are a good fit. And I don't know sometimes before we get on a call if we are a good fit. And I don't want to push someone who wouldn't be a good fit for me to work with me. I mean, what's the damn point? It's going to be very unpleasant for both of us.
Yeah, here's it's a great comment. I can't see the name right now. So there are definitely times when I wish I were more naturally extroverted, mostly for getting more information and context, etc. in public settings. Wondering if there are some techniques to help with that. Great question.
Yeah, I think for me, what works is, as you said, it's having a conversation and seeing where that conversation is going to lead. Because if you think about it, whether it's B2B or B2C or whatever you want to call it, it's still human to human at the end of the day. And that means that the main components are probably going to be the same. So human nature is going to dictate what happens. The fine details might change, but it's still, humans are going to human. So what I like to do is I don't like to pressure anyone, because people don't really like being sold to in an aggressive way. So it would just be having conversations and to not offer anything until the other person has expressed significant interest. So even something like, if they don't say, can I have your business card? I'm probably not going to try to give it to them, because if they wanted to, they probably would have asked for it. So me saying, oh, here's my business card, they'll be like, okay, just to be polite, and then put it away and never think of it again. So it's about taking it step by step and not trying to jump like 5 steps ahead. So really just have a conversation and not necessarily have in mind, oh, I'm going to sell them, or I'm going to give them my business card, or I'm going to get wherever. It's about leading, I guess, with some degree of curiosity, as opposed to having a certain goal, and they can see that you're mentally going through a checklist, like, oh, I've talked to that many people already, score. Like, they don't want to feel like that. Just see where it works, and if it doesn't work, then you can talk to someone else, but take it one step at a time.
Oh, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So here's a really interesting comment from Lucy. She said that speaking to people that really scare her, she can talk better, and I think that's really interesting. I would love to read more interpretation. Do you feel that way, or?
That's a bit broad. Do you mean in public, Lucy, or in general? One-to-one, one-to-many? If I'm speaking to people that really scare me. As in what, asking your boss for a raise, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. Let us know, Lucy. Very interesting. Yeah.
I like people, but I like control.
Very interesting comment from Patty. Thank you for joining us live. So she loves to control her own time, and but also needs alone time. So am I not shy either? So yeah. So what do you think about this situation?
You kind of sound like me, Patty. So you sound like an introvert if you like people, but just in small doses, because no one's 100% introverted or extroverted. Like, even super extroverts will probably at some point need a little bit of me time. It's just less frequent and less prolonged. And like me, I do actually get out of the house and talk to people, even if it's not business sometimes. But it's just not my general MO. So I don't know. Ambivert is a trendy new word. To be honest, I don't know to what extent ambivert basically means not introvert or extrovert.
Somewhere, yeah.
I'm not convinced that's really a thing. I know that some people might get now. I might have kicked the hornet's nest here. I'm not convinced that ambivert is a thing. I think that probably almost everyone leans one way or the other. They might just not lean equally strongly. Like, as I said, if we take that scale of 1 to 10, you know, whether you're a 6, a 7, or 8, a 9, or a 10, you're still an extrovert. You might just be super extroverted or just more extroverted than not. I can't imagine that many people being a 5 that they are exactly in between. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't think I've ever met someone who falls under that category of really not either. They probably lean a certain way, I think.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, we are just wrapping up here. What a fascinating conversation. I'm learning so much about many of my friends. So I can't wait to implement some of the techniques that you mentioned. My coaching calls, working with clients, and my daily life, interacting with my husband. So any public speaking like tips you can share with us? You know, we kind of discussed how to overcome that initial fear. So once we are actually on stage, or you know, right now on the virtual stage, so any specific techniques that you can share with us to help us smash every talk that we give?
The biggest thing, I think, if there's one, I hate that term mindset shift, but I think in this case it applies. One of the biggest perspective kind of shifts is remember that it's not about you. That's what they used to yell at us all the time at drama school. It's not about you. It's not about you. Because if you are appearing in front of an audience, if you're performing, and public speaking is a type of performance, make no mistake, you are there to give the audience something. You're there to gift, to transmit, to give them something valuable, hopefully. So remember that it's not about you, which is why I tend to not like a lot of the advice that floats out there about public speaking, which is all about inner stuff, and they treat it as if it's something inner as opposed to something outer. And it's all about how to feel more confident, how to do this and that. And my objection is, yeah, that's all fine, but your audience does not benefit from you being confident. Your audience cannot read your mind. They can only read your voice, your body language, the choice of words that you use. So what you give them is the most important part. Of course, if you do it well, in return, you will probably feel more confident. But it's about showing up in service of the other, as kind of woo-woo as that sounds. So remember that it's not about you, and you're there to help someone. You're there to give them something valuable. Focusing on yourself is not the best. When you're on stage, obviously, when you're warming up and you use the warm-ups and whatnot that I told you, yes, focus on yourself. But once you're actually in front of the audience, remember that it's about them. So look at the camera or at your audience if you're physically there, and really give to them. And remember that it's not about you. The more you focus on them, the better you'll be, and the less likely you'll be caught in some kind of, hamster wheel of negative thoughts. Because the best way to stop freaking out and obsessing about yourself is to think of the people that you're helping. Really, that's the quickest way I think that I can fit into sort of 2, 3, 5 minutes that we've got left. Focus on your audience. Remember that it's not about you at that point. We can navel gaze on our own time. When we're there, serve.
I love that. Really powerful. I think I definitely adopted this practice. Just like I'm in front of my camera, I have to show so that like talking a lot. So learn, because I'm not sure about you. I cannot stand my voice, and I can't stand looking at myself on camera. So when I watch the replay, I will skip. Oh my God, it's me talking again. I have to skip that part. And
that's good to focus on the other people, not on yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. So really interesting. Yeah. So share with us, where can people? Yeah, I agree. Lance, right? Worth staying up late. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
you. Totally. So yeah, you got lots of love, and so share with us, where can people connect with you on the social media?
Yeah. So I'm only active on LinkedIn. I made an Instagram account, but I've barely used it. So for the time being, social media is LinkedIn for me. So it's my name, first name, last name. I can't remember if it's dot. Should I write it down? Can I actually comment, or are you going to write it?
No, dot is heaven. Yeah. So I have
it there. Perfect. And then
on the screen.
I can't remember if it's dash or full stop. And then website would be
actually not on social media that much, right?
Yeah. And website would be not my complete name. So Nick Diakan, that's how far it goes. nickdiakan.com.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So make sure to connect with Nick. What a great conversation. I feel really energized by our conversation. I'm ready to head to my next 2 meetings. So thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live from all over the globe. I really love the conversation, having you being in the live audience with us. Many of you stayed up late until 3 a.m. So thank you so much. And I hope to see you next Friday. the same time, same location. I have a really amazing guest coming up next Friday. So I hope you can join us live. Enjoy your weekend. Bye, everyone.
Everyone. Bye-bye.